In this lesson, we'll begin painting some variation for the skin. So let's jump down to our background layer underneath the ambient occlusion, making sure that we're on our color. Okay, we'll go ahead and choose a new color just with our paintbrush selected, and I want to get something that is maybe a little bit more like a pale yellow kind of a color. And you can use whatever color you want, obviously, but this is what I'm going to choose. And I want to just create a little bit of distinction between different areas. So let me choose the paintbrush here. And we can change our size a bit. And then I just want to come in and start to paint a little bit of variation here, for instance, on the abdomen. So making that a little bit more into the yellow. Okay, you can turn pressure and turn on pen pressure for that if you want to drive the pressure of the stroke based on your pen pressure. So I'll go ahead and create a little bit of variation under there. I want to go back to the original green and choose maybe a little bit of a lighter green with maybe a little bit more yellow in it. And then come in under the arms here and in some of these soft tissue places and just draw this out, paint it in. So just kind of lighten things up underneath the arm. Okay, we can do the same thing down here. Kind of in some of these soft tissue type areas. Okay, and just using the basic brush at this point. And this I'm painting it onto the lower base layer, the background. But if you wanted to, you could create a new layer for that. So again, just creating a little bit of variation. We can come down into the legs and do the same sort of thing. Just varying that up a little bit. Let's come over and do the same thing over here. You can kind of see that seam there as we paint. All right. Now there may also be a sort of skin texture that you want to add. Let's also, before we do that, let's jump in here and just paint in the neck a little bit to add that sort of yellow or that really soft tissue up here under the neck. And just kind of blend it in with the rest of it. Okay. Now if we have a texture that we want to use to project on here, there are several ways that we can do this. One way would be just to go into texture. Let's open it up. So we'll go open texture, and then in your project files there are a number of texture files that you can use. So I'm going to grab this stone skin and open it up. And if I just go ahead and select everything and hit copy, Control C, and then I go back to my color texture and hit Control V to paste, it's going to actually add that in as a new layer. So it added that entire texture into my existing color texture as a layer, which it's at full strength with a normal blend mode. So you can see it, if we go into our view, you can see what that looks like. Now you can see down here where we have areas that are really, really small and areas that are large. That's just because of this difference in size of the UV shells in here. So for instance, they are exactly scaled directly relative to one another, which is to say the body, you're able to get more within one of these polygons than you are on the legs, because the legs are a little bit smaller. So that's why it looks a little bit off. Okay, but you can very easily see that we now have a texture over the entire model. So what we can do now is, let's say we just want to blend it together a little bit more. So we'll change the blend mode of that layer. So we'll go ahead and hit that multiply on that. So now it's multiplied on there. Maybe we want to take the value down here so it blends in a little bit more, so we can kind of take that down. Okay, and there may be areas where we want to actually get rid of some of this detail, for instance up here. So we can either mask it out or we can just use erase. So I'll grab the eraser and I can come in and just erase part of that layer in the areas where I don't want it to be. So I can come in here and over here on the side, I'll come in and erase that detail coming from that particular layer that we're on right now. All right, coming down here, Okay, and so this, we're not really projecting in our 3D view. We're just kind of grabbing a texture, copying and pasting it into our existing texture setup. And then we can come in and erase parts of that layer that we've decided we don't want. Okay, so we can come in here and kind of get rid of that a little bit. Okay, maybe in the neck, we also want to kind of get rid of some of that detail. So we've got another texture that we want to be able to add to the neck. So we can come in and get rid of some of that. You could do this in your texture view as well, just erasing parts of it out. Okay, so I can come in and just erase some of that out. And again, you can decide whether you want to blend that in, maybe take that down to 50% or so, just so there's a little bit of variation in there, but it's not quite as much. Okay. Now we could also come in and paste it into our 3D view. So if we were to grab the stone skin and let's do another selection, this time we'll do kind of just a piece of it. So we can select any portion of this, hit Control C, go back to our view, and I want to turn on projection painting, and let's paste that in. And then you can see here that I've got this element that I've copied and pasted. And then I can come in and you can see we've got this projection layer over here. I can now come in and I'll say yes, I want to transform it. I can come in and erase parts of that layer and then just figure out where I want to actually project it. Okay. And then I can go ahead and project that down. Okay. You've got buttons up here for discard, apply, detach. So you've got all that available to you up there. I can turn that off at any time. Okay, now let's go back to our color texture. And let's call this layer something meaningful. We'll call this something like skin. Okay. And again, you can come in and start to get rid of some of this detail in here where we don't necessarily want it. Maybe take your pressure, so it's kind of a soft brush here, and just kind of erase out some of that detail that you have there. For instance, maybe underneath here, it's not quite as strong. Coming up to the hands here. All right. So you don't have to use that particular file. You can use a different file if you want to. But the idea is just that you can use photographic detail or detail that you've got in an existing texture to add as a layer, and then you can erase out different portions of it if you want to. Okay. Probably also want to erase out those details or that skin detail back here on these bits, because we're going to actually add detail from another image to these. Okay, so I can go in and kind of erase that out. It doesn't have to be exact, you can leave a little bit. And down here as well. And just take out some of that detail from that particular image. And again, just as with anything else, you can also do this in your texture view. Okay, but in your 3D view, it's maybe makes a little bit more sense on what it is you're painting, a little bit nicer. Sometimes it's good to be able to do things in your texture view as well. That can be really useful. So it just depends on what particular thing that you happen to be painting. Okay, probably want to come in here and also kind of take out a little bit of that up on these scales. Just remove a little bit of that bumpy texture, the skin texture. Do the same thing over here. All right, once we've got that, the next thing that we're going to look at is painting the scales on the back. So we'll use a different image for that process. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that in the next lesson.